So, we got a little bit of NBA news about two former teammates, Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin. I think this is pretty interesting, so I'm just going to talk about what happened. Let's talk about Drummond first, because I think he's certainly at this point the better player of the two. All these reports are from Woj or Shams or trusted sources. So with Drummond, I think he's currently the better player of the two right now. And the news is the Cavs are no longer going to play him and are looking for a trade. So, this doesn't entirely shock me. As soon as they traded for Jared Allen, it seemed like Drummond is probably on his way out. That and also the fact that he just doesn't fit with their timeline and he's on an expiring contract. It just wouldn't make sense for them to be playing him right now and stunting the growth of younger players like Jared Allen, who has been good this season and certainly has a higher ceiling than Drummond and might actually be a better player than Drummond right now, and certainly is the player for the Cavs in the future at the center position. So there's a couple teams that have been, rumored. There was rumors that the Raptors could be trading for him, and then if he were to get bought out, which is also a possibility, there's rumors about the Mavericks or the Brooklyn Nets. So if we talk about a Raptors trade, I can't really see that one happening just because the Raptors don't have any bad contracts they could just flip for Drummond. I mean, you'd assume it would be Baines, but that's $7 million. They have to get to like $23 million. And then maybe Norman Powell. But then again, Norman Powell might actually be a more valuable player than Andre Drummond. So that one, I don't know. I can't really see a trade there unless there were to be a third team involved. And then maybe they could get there. I don't really want to talk too much about that possibility because, it's pretty complicated and I just don't know right now. So, the Cavs are sort of like, if they're not going to be able to trade him, would they agree to a buyout? And I don't see why not, depending on how much money Drummond would be willing to leave on the table. He is an expiring contract. So, maybe he'd want to go try and get a ring with the Nets or play for a team like the Mavericks. And then if the Cavs can just save some money, they're not going to be playing him anyway. So we're not going to see Drummond in a Cavs uniform again. So why not just try and get a bit of money back, get him off the team if he's not playing? So if we talk about the possibility of Drummond on the Nets, he sort of solves none of their issues, but then he kind of solves some of their issues. So the big place where Drummond would help, and probably Drummond's best ability is his rebounding. He's a guy who can get 15 boards a game. And, the Nets are a weak rebounding team. They don't really have any great rebounders. Their best rebounder might actually be James Harden. So they certainly need that. And, would Drummond be an upgrade over DeAndre Jordan? I mean, probably, but then again, Drummond's still not a good defender, and he's not really a good offensive player. I mean, he can do a little bit of screen setting and pick and roll stuff, but, he's not much of an upgrade over DeAndre Jordan on that side. And then defensively, they're both not great. So I would say what Drummond would be bringing to the Nets would be the rebounding and, a bit of offensive ability. Drummond can get, he's averaging 17.5 points a game, but it's not efficient, and, I don't think the Nets would be wanting to do any Andre Drummond post-ups when they have players like Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. So, I could see it happening if he were to get bought out. I think it would definitely help them rebounding-wise, but I don't know what else it would really do for them. But then again, if it's costing them a minimum or the Dinwiddie exception, the injured player exception, which is like $5 million, then why not? And then for the Mavs, it's sort of the same thing as for the Nets. I mean, the Mavs are also sort of a weak rebounding team if they want to play Porzingis at the center position. I mean, Porzingis isn't a great rebounder, and again, they have a decent guard rebounder in Luka, but he's not really. You don't really want him to be your main rebounder. So Drummond could definitely help them out rebounding wise, but would you want to give him Kleber's minutes because Kleber is someone who can space the floor, or would he, if he's getting someone like the Cauley Stein's minutes, then I guess it's not too big a deal, but Cauley Stein is someone who can space the floor vertically as an alley-oop threat. I mean, Drummond is also sort of an alley-oop threat, but it's not as athletic as Cauley Stein, so I don't know about that one. So, here, I think an NBA scout put it best. This came out today. An NBA scout on Andre Drummond. He can give you 30 and 20 and still not have an impact on the game. And I think that's sort of the Drummond thing. Like, he always has great averages in terms of points and rebounds, but he's not an impactful defensive player, and he's not really a good offensive player either. I think he's shooting like under 50% on layups as someone who's 6'10" and a center, and that's just not good at all. So I think the Cavs, this is decent for them, just looking towards the future, getting a high draft pick this year, letting their young guys get more experience, and then as for what happens to Drummond, maybe he could help a team rebounding wise, but I'm not so sure. Okay, so now we get to Blake Griffin, who also in a similar situation to Drummond, sort of, except I think the situation is more dire for Blake Griffin. He's not been good this season, not aggressive. He hasn't had a dunk yet this season, and I think that tells you about almost everything you need to know. If you're not like a player like Blake Griffin, if he has 0 dunks, that's sort of a problem. What's happening is that Blake Griffin will be out of the lineup until the franchise and his representatives can work through a resolution on his playing future. That was the report that came out from Woj. So Blake Griffin's basically not going to be playing anymore for the Pistons. But I think this one is a bit bleaker because Griffin has 2 years left on his contract and $75 million. So that's a lot of money, and that could be a problem for the Pistons in terms of moving him on, because I'm just going to say it, no team is trading for Blake Griffin. Might have the worst contract in the league. It's averaging like 13 points or even less. I mean, it's just not a good situation, and I don't want to say he's washed, but he might be. So no team is giving up some assets that accumulate to the amount of money that Blake Griffin makes. So it could be tough for the Pistons to move him. And in terms of a buyout, I don't really know if that could happen either. Just because Blake, $75 million, for it to be worth it for the Pistons, he would have to give back quite a bit of money, because they're not going to buy him out just to save $10 million, because they're still giving up $65 million over the next 2 years for nothing. And for Blake, I don't know how much money he wants to give up, because this is going to be his last big payday for sure. No team is going to be signing him to a big contract after this one expires. So, a bit of a rough situation all around there. We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because I don't really know what can happen. I don't really see a buyout happening. Maybe a buyout, but definitely not a trade. So if I had to predict, I mean, it's tough. Maybe the Pistons and Blake just ride it out, or maybe they somehow agree to a buyout. We'll have to see. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. That's the end of this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.